Little Caesars Premium Detroit-style deep dish pizza with more cheese and pepperoni is our most premium pizza experience. And now it's even more premium. Just call 1-855-TALK-DEEP and we'll compliment you while you eat it. This premium treatment isn't just for eccentric billionaires. It's for you, with your shiny hair and very kind eyes. That one's on us. Pick up our premium deep dish pizza for just $8 and call 1-855-TALK-DEEP. Hot and ready 4 to 8 or order anytime, you cool rebel. Only at Little Caesars.
Pizza.
At participating locations plus tax.
Blog Talk Radio.
Days that just go wrong, make you wanna holler and shout and throw your hands up in the air, wondering what it's all about. And you think that things can't get much worse in a second, oh, everything just goes south. Keep on keeping on, whatever don't kill you makes you strong. Don't you worry, it won't be long. Darkness comes before the dawn. I'll take it one day at a time. God's grace, you're gonna be fine. You got what it takes down inside. Road ain't alone. Keep on keeping on. Some people will stand in your way. They're always saying what you cannot do. Don't stop chasing your dreams. Working hard to make them come true. Oh. And if it ever gets too tough, just remember you'll fail. Well, I'll always see you through it. Keep on keeping on. Whatever don't kill you makes you strong. Don't you worry, it won't be long. Darkness comes before the dawn. Take it one day at a time. With God's grace, you're gonna be fine. You got what it takes down inside. The road ain't alone. Keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping on. Whatever don't kill you makes you strong. Don't you worry, it won't be long. Darkness comes before the dawn. I'll take it one day at a time. With God's grace, you're gonna be fine. You got what it takes down inside. The road ain't long. Keep on. The road ain't long. Keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping on. Oh yeah. Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you strong. That kind of describes these early primaries. I've always said these early primaries are not about the winners of the primaries. They're about the people that are behind the winners. And really, if the primary doesn't kill you off, it can give you some strength. And we saw that last week with somebody who was rising. We saw that with Rubio. Even though Ted Cruz took the first place trophy, Rubio really got the benefit, a bigger benefit out of coming in third place and beating expectations and things than it did for what was really expected for a Ted Cruz to win. So Rubio walked off with some of that. But I'm going to tell you this week, and I've never been a big Christie fan. I like the man. I think he's done a pretty good job as a governor for the most part. He scares me as a president. I've got some real issues with him. But I'll tell you, I'm giving him kudos this week because really, to me, the only thing standing between a Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz finish, which is what I'm hoping for at the end of this primary season, the only thing really standing between Ted Cruz at this point doing that, making it all the way, is Marco Rubio. And Marco Rubio for about 2 weeks, gave Ted Cruz a run for his money with some momentum. But I think New Hampshire, Ted coming in third, which is good for Ted. New Hampshire is a liberal state. Its Republicans seem to be a whole lot more moderate. It's more an area for the establishment to win. I think that's why you're seeing Kasich take 16%, Jeb take 11%, Marco take 10%, and Christie take 8%. That's a good chunk of establishment vote, which is a lot bigger than in Ohio. So I think Ted Cruz coming in third is good for Ted Cruz at this point. I don't think it gives him any extra momentum, but it keeps him right on the race where he's at. John Kasich, man, I'm going to tell you, and we'll discuss probably a lot of John Kasich tonight, I'm sure. I know Dan's got some things to say about him. I'll tell you, if John Kasich was set up better as we look down the primary schedule, to where a win like this, a strong second-place finish, could give him some momentum. If he had anything to add that to, I think it would be good for Kasich. I think all this does is between Kasich and Christie, which are kind of, they're really the two governors left in the establishment that have a chance. Jeb doesn't have a chance. But of those two, I think Kasich gets enough out of this to last longer than Christie. And Christie, I really think tomorrow, or maybe even tonight, decides he is going to walk away from the race. But it's interesting. Like Dan said, we're having a great time. It's a horse race for sure. We're watching all these things go on. We're going to have Glenn join us in the second hour, I do believe. He said he would be calling in or at some point. But we've got Dan and Jennifer with us. Let me make sure. Oh, no, we've got already. Here we go. We've got everybody in with. Looks like we've got everybody in with us. So we're going to just start it. We're going to have all kinds of things to talk about, I am sure. I want to remind everybody we've got some great things going on Contending for Truth Radio. I want to especially tell everybody you want to listen to last Saturday's episode of Saturday Symposium with Symposium. Oh, boy, the mouth's already not working tonight. Saturday Sanitarium. Is that what it is, Dan? Saturday Symposium. You guys had Morgan Brittany last Saturday, who is one of my favorite people. I love Morgan. She and the Politichicks have been a great friend of this show. Been on many times on different shows here and always do a good job. I got to listen to a little bit of it, Dan, but she just did a great job. I want to encourage everybody to go back. Remember, you can listen to any of our shows in archive. You can go back 3 years ago. You can go back and listen to the very first episode of American Sovereignty Radio, but don't look for it under American Sovereignty. It was called Parental Sovereignty back then. It was a different show. We had Stacy Tawbush started out with us. She did a great job. Found she had too many things she needed to do, keep being a mom. We're homeschooling her kids, and we miss her. But we've come a long way. We've had a great time. And with that, I want to also remind everybody we're going to be having some guests on in our future shows. And if you know anybody that would make a great guest, get in contact with one of us. We love to have people on. I love to have politicians on, and love to have leaders of organizations on, and authors. We've had a lot of authors. If you know somebody that wants to get their message out, that's what Blog Talk Radio is all about. You know, we don't reach 5 million people. We don't reach the numbers that Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity reaches by a long shot, but I believe we reach a little bit different kind of audience. We reach a really active audience, and I'll tell you, it is a wonderful thing for us, just us grunts, me and Dan and Jennifer and Gary and Greg and Glenn. Told you my mouth ain't going to work tonight. Well, I'm going to just hang this thing up. Glenn and Rodney, we're all just, normal people, giving an opportunity for normal people to really hear from a candidate or an organization. And I think Blog Talk's just an incredible avenue that we have, and so glad we get to do that. So if you know anybody that could use some time on the air, maybe they wrote a book, or maybe they're running for office, get in contact with us. We love to have guests, love to be able to talk to them one-on-one, like some of the Carl Pittman. Wonderful to be able to have that conversation with somebody that's going to help lead our nation in a small way. So with that, Jennifer Montrose is down there in Alabama. Jennifer, you and I, we tend to, although the last 6 weeks I've kind of changed my schedule a little bit. If you've noticed, I haven't been on Facebook a whole lot. I had to disconnect from the network a little bit for a little while. I'll be back, I promise. But Jennifer, you and I have always been similar in, you and I have always had our fingers stuck in multiple things at once. and you and I have had some late-night conversations about one of our projects that we're involved in. And most of the time, if you've been involved in something, I've been involved in it right there as your shoulder. And if I've been involved in something, you've been involved in it right there as my shoulder. And there is a lot of fascinating things going on right now in our election cycle, in our government. So we're dealing a lot with the Second Amendment right now, and some good things going on in Florida with that. With all of these things, Jennifer Montrose, I want to tell you something. You have a pulse on many things that are going on because of that. You talk to different people in inner circles, outer circles, so on and so forth. And so I want to ask you this question, Jennifer. I thought about this morning. As you look out over just your network and the people that you talk about and the people that you talk with and you work with, are you seeing the same change that I'm seeing? And Jennifer and I haven't talked about this yet. We remember when we felt the momentum on behalf of the Kaine train. Man, when that train started going, we felt it literally. I am feeling through the connections that I am reaching out to over the last 3 or 4 weeks, a strong sense developing of momentum of we're actually going to win this. I'm hearing a lot of people, as they watch the primaries, as they watch the debates, as they watch what happens to the Democrats, as they watch what happens to Hillary, as they see Bernie rising up and bringing socialism into the mainstream, which we win every time on, folks. There could be no better gift than a socialist to run against in a presidential election. I mean, we can crush socialism with this if Bernie wins. And because of that, because of Hillary's problems, even if she does win, because we've got some great momentum, whether people like Trump or not, or Cruz or not, some of these guys are providing some great momentum. I'm seeing, Jennifer, a change from 2 years ago, and I want to know if you're seeing the same change, where you had a lot of people just almost at the point of giving up, to right now where they're more excited, and that's not about a candidate. It's not being excited about Herman Cain or Ted Cruz or Donald Trump or that kind of excitement. It's actual excitement that we are winning the battle. We're turning the thing around. We're pulling the pendulum back the other direction. And I'm, for the first time, in a lot of people that have had almost acted like they were really losing hope, seeing huge hope come back. Just funny, kind of weird in the last 3 weeks. Jennifer Montrose, I want to start you off with that. Are you seeing the same thing I'm seeing in your networks?
Yes, I am. Extremely. I mean, I'm seeing people get involved. I'm seeing people get involved that, that were just like on the fence, trying to decide who they were actually going to support and vote for. I mean, especially like right after Walker got out, some of the people that I've actually been, communicating with that said, I'm just going to only focus on the, local races and stuff. And then all of a sudden it was just like, wow, like, things just started popping. And it just seems like for Trump, I mean, it doesn't seem that there's anything that he says that seems to shake people. I mean, maybe for those people that really are passionate about him and really believe in what he's supporting, making America great again, I see that. But I'm also seeing a lot of my my connections with people that were involved with Herman Cain's campaign jumping on board Ted Cruz, like, it's like, the Cain train all over again as far as the enthusiasm and excitement, and everything. I'm seeing that with both of those races. And, it was exciting to see, the turnout for New Hampshire, and it's just, people that I would not have thought that would jump in and get involved have done so. And I'm just really praying that when the general election comes around, that we don't have people sitting at home or writing in candidates. I really, really hope that we can unify the masses of the Republican Party, and vote Republican all the way through each state. I'm telling you, when, I'm sure somebody's going to bring it up, but the comment that Trump made when he came out and repeated what that woman said in the audience at his rally in New Hampshire, some people may not like what I'm about to say, but we're looking for a candidate who has the cojones to say, if they need to, in talking to international world leaders, if they need to be able to look them square in the eye and say, F you, the America comes first, they're looking for somebody that is not going to, back down from that and not do the political correct thing, but take a stand for the American people. And I think that's what people are mad about. They're really upset about is they want somebody, because right now we don't look strong. Our administration is supporting illegals. They're supporting ISIS. And, you recently saw our divider-in-chief, speaking before the Muslim community. I can't remember which state and county it was in, but maybe Dan or Scott can remember. But, I was just appalled. And then I saw pictures today of, I think it was Hillary Clinton's rally in New Hampshire, and somebody left the American flag just totally wadded up on the stands, on the ground. And that's ridiculous. Our founding fathers are rolling over in their graves because it's a combination of things. And I know there's so many people, it's like, that are afraid that to stand up for the Constitution, to fight for the Constitution on the front lines, you get labeled a terrorist. And we see that's what's happening in Oregon. You've got peaceful protesters in Oregon versus what we saw in Ferguson. And now we know that there's mercs in Oregon, that they've hired mercenaries, and I was listening to audio where they were talking about, there was an interview with a woman who owns a ranch in Oregon, and she said, why is it that we need all this extra, police and sheriff presence when we have so much of it already in place to begin with? What's the purpose? And the Rangers are having so much trouble, but there's just, I think that this is going to be, the exciting time, because everybody says we don't want it to have the last 8 years to reoccur again for another 4, and then, so on and so forth. And so I just think, it's going to come down to the wire between, two candidates, Trump and Cruz.
I agree,
so,
Jennifer. I I want to throw this in here and throw this to you to respond to this. You and I, and Dan, but specifically you and I know each other very, very well. You and I know things about each other that nobody else in the world knows about. You have a certain level of speech that you uphold, partially because of standards, but the standards are because of your Christianity and your beliefs. And so the book of James talks about controlling the tongue. You try and very much control the tongue. I try very much to control the tongue. Since we started Contending for Faith Radio, of course, we've got the First Amendment right there on the show page for you. I posted that. We're free to say anything else we want here. But we keep our language at a certain level here most of the time, barring Mondays, folks. But we really, you and I, Dan, Glenn, we don't cuss on the air. And it's blatantly obvious. If you listen to what we say, we don't call people names. We really have even when not discussing anything close to religion, a Christian dialogue that we've got here. Now, that's important for what I'm about ready to say. As a gospel preacher, as a Christian, as under the foundation of what I just mentioned, in speaking personally to Donald Trump, I would tell him, man, I wouldn't talk that way, dude. I wouldn't use foul language. I wouldn't use ad hominem. I wouldn't do that kind of a thing where he's repeating pussy and this and that and her face and all of that. However, I am going to say this. I am thankful every time he does it, because while I wouldn't use that tactic, it's the only tactic that was really available. And Donald Trump has literally knocked out political correctness out of the presidential primary. And he's made it okay to say whatever, even if I don't agree with it. I agree with the right to say it, because the Second Amendment was designed for the things that Donald Trump says. The Second Amendment was never designed for what you and I do on Blog Talk Radio. Because I'm going to tell you, I mean, we get harsh against people here, but we talk very, very kindly on this show. We speak nicely. The Second Amendment was designed for the things that aren't so nice, the things that people don't necessarily want to hear, so that they can't turn around and say, okay, you can't say that anymore. I don't like what Chris Matthews. I don't like a lot of the things he says, but boy, I sure would fight to the death beside him for his right to say it. And so, Jennifer, I'm kind of torn between some of the things that Donald Trump says. My personal passion does a facepalm. Oh, no, not again. The politician in me, the person that understands politics and understands what he's doing, is high-fiving him every time he does it. How do we end up in that situation, Jennifer?
Well, I'll tell you this. I would guess, if I had to make a guess, I would say that a majority of the people that are throwing stones, probably if they looked in the mirror, and really took inventory, would probably lower their heads. I mean, and so here's the thing. I want a president that is going to be able to look the leaders of North Korea, the leaders of Mexico, straight in the eye, with no fear, with no hesitation, and say exactly what needs to be said. No sugarcoating. Call it as they see it. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. And I want somebody who has got experience in being able to make those kinds of deals, where they've had to deal with people not so nice. Maybe you're dealing with the enemy. and keep, what is it they say? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And so when I think of somebody who's not going to back down and is not going to be bullied, is going to say exactly what needs to be said at the right time. And sometimes it may not be something that you like, but we need somebody like a Patton. Somebody said to me earlier today, and I think this is spot on, that people appreciated Patton for what he did in the end, but nobody wanted to know what it took for him to get there. And, I'm sure Dan can elaborate on some of this, but, all the details that it takes us to win the war, people don't want to know all the gory details. But, it's not always pretty. And those founding fathers, when they fought, for our freedom, when the abolitionists fought for freedom, it was not easy. And a lot of things happened that people didn't like, but the end result is what counted, and for the longest time, at least we know for the last, 8 years or so, America's been looked upon by other countries as being a weak country. We have so much going on in our country that is so not what we had and not the same, that we had when Reagan was around. And it's sad. It's really, really sad. But I'm sure Dan probably has something to speak about when it comes to Patton and how it relates to 2016.
Well, definitely, Jennifer. I've been comparing Patton to Trump for the last month. And Patton, one of his famous speeches, actually in a few of his famous speeches, he came around and said, it's the greatest honor for a person to die for this country. He said, I think that's a bunch of BS. He said, why don't we let some other poor SOB on the losing side to die for his country? And this was how Patton talked. Actually, that's a real watered-down version. Patton was notorious for swearing, but he also wrote in his memoirs to his wife that he had to speak on the level of the soldiers for them to follow. And the soldiers, in a way, well, they said they hated him, but they would follow him to hell and back. And he did some things during World War II that have never been equaled. He took a part of the Third Army during the Battle of the Bulge who was engaged in combat, and when he heard that Bastogne, 100 miles away, was surrounded by the Germans, he disengaged a third of his army, marched them 100 miles, and re-engaged them in battle within 24 hours. And to this day, we could not do that. So this man could accomplish miracles. Now, he almost got court-martialed 3 times. When he slapped the 2 soldiers suffering from PTSD, he almost was thrown out of the Army. And his punishment to Ike Eisenhower punished him by putting him in charge of what they called the Paper Army. It was a fake army across from Calais, where Hitler was convinced that the invasion of Europe was going to happen there. And as such, he moved most of his panzer divisions north. allowing for the invasion of Normandy, even though Rommel knew that Normandy was going to be the landing site. So Patton did things. He chased Rommel across North Africa and defeated him. During World War I, Patton took his first tank battalion and drove right through the Ziegfeld line and was 20 miles behind the lines and was headed directly for Berlin. And had it not been for sending somebody from behind the lines going up and stopping him, he would have gone right to Berlin. I mean, he was that type of man. And I see the same in Trump. Trump gives it to you with no sugarcoating at all. And like as Scott said, he does not speak in the manner that I would or any of us would. But the fact is, by not sugarcoating anything, he is talking in the language of the average person. He will not win every one of us conservatives. There's many conservatives that are like us who refuse to swear. That's just our religious belief and our foundation. It's just not part of us. But a lot of people, a lot of moderates on both sides swear on a regular basis. He is going to bring in Democratic moderates, and he's going to bring in a large portion of the moderate part of our party. And this is where he is going to succeed. And one thing about Trump is that he is like Cruz. He's pretty honest. I mean, whatever Trump says, when he says he's going to build that wall, I believe him. I believe that he'll build that wall and he'll get Mexico to pay for it. I don't know how he's going to do it, but he'll do it. That's the way Trump is. And he's one of those type of people who is what you see is what you get. And there are a lot of conservatives who can't stand him. And as you said, Jennifer, most of the old cane train fellow members are with Cruz. And personally, I like Cruz also, but looking at things the way they are today, Trump looks like he's going to take it. I mean, he won solidly with 34%. And Kasich, who was number 2, had 16%. So, I mean, that speaks... the New Hampshire primary, granted, is not the deciding factor. But what happens in New Hampshire kind of sets the tone. It kind of shows where the people are in this country when it comes to their feelings. And this is where Trump is able to really capitalize. As for Kasich, again, in New Hampshire, because he's a moderate, is more acceptable than Cruz, who they consider too far to the right. So we'd expect Kasich to do pretty well here. Christie, People like him, but people are afraid of him too. And Rubio just, after the last election, the last debate, he went down in flames. It was like watching the Titanic sink. When Christie attacked him, all he could do was attack Obama. And he did it 3 times. Obviously, Rubio was shaken, and he did not know how to respond to Christie's attacks.
Let me throw in here real quick, Dan. Let me throw in here, Dan, breaking news for everybody that will be important to this discussion. Chris Christie's going home to take a deep breath on the campaign, which we have all experienced before. We sat for 3 or 4 days, maybe 5 days, waiting on Herman Cain to make a decision. Boy, that awful Saturday. We still talk about that awful Saturday. But Chris Christie's, I think at this point we can say he's done. So I'll pass it back to you, Dan.
Okay, thanks for that. Because I was just talking about it, and Christie had 8%. So he was down there with Pieroni and Carson. So I can see Christie bowing out, which is, this is part of the primaries. It's survival of the fittest. So we more than likely saw Christie for the last time. But Bush and Cruz are hanging in there, as well as Rubio. And I think that's what's going to be the final group that we're going to see go through to the end. Because the top 2 positions are taken. The 3rd place is up for grabs. And you're going to see a lot of battling back and forth. Because whoever's in 3rd place is probably within striking distance of whoever is going to be in 2nd place. So that gives them a chance later on. And those 3 positions are up for grab. Right now, Bush, Cruz are separated by 1 point. Rubio's tied basically with Bush. So, and as for the rest, we have a better chance of rain in the Sahara. It's for the rest, it's pretty much over. It's like refloating the Titanic.
Well, Dan, I want to throw something at you for your response on this as well. Tonight is a little bit different night as a primary. New Hampshire is very, very liberal. It's more moderate, like you said, Dan, and establishment is more respected. We expected the establishment to get a bigger vote. Had Chris Christie walked out yesterday, and all of those votes went to Kasich, who really they've both got a lot of the same voter pool, and as well Bush and Kasich will be who benefits from Christie bowing out. In a primary like New Hampshire, where establishment was strength, do you maybe think if Christie had just said, okay, it doesn't look good 2 days ago, 3 days ago, that he could have given Kasich enough to really make a real strong second place showing instead of a mediocre one and really change the whole game?
Actually, he could have very easily. Had Christie bowed out, I would say that Kasich would have been up in the 20% area.
Yeah, and I see a Jeb 3rd finish. Could have changed the whole thing.
So it's going to be interesting, especially, come South Carolina, all bets are off for for third place and even second place, because I'm not sure if Cruz is strong enough in South Carolina. Once Cruz hits the South is where you're going to see him establish himself. But right now, it's going to be up for grabs, and the good thing is, with Trump being from New York and well liked in New York, I think he can take that state, which is how many, 45 electoral votes?
Oh, yeah, huge.
I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's only
making it a landslide.
Right. And that will probably really solidify a presidential win for him.
Well, and Dan, don't you think Trump also... Don't you think he also does the same thing really in California?
He very well may.
Pushes Florida from being purple to a pretty strong red. I think that's what Donald Trump, and let me say it again, I've said it a million times, folks, he's not my favorite. I just got a whole lot of things that I really, really strongly like about Donald Trump, and that's one. I think he helps you in Florida, and I think he does the same. I think you're onto something, Dan.
Yeah, he is. What he's going to do, he's a crossover. He's the person that can unite the two parties, because he's going to take the moderates from both sides, and that's going to be a major change, and it will help our country immensely. The rest of our candidates, we love Cruz because of what he stands for. He is a solid, unequivocal conservative. Nobody can argue that point. And Cruz will fight for our conservative values till the horses come home, or cows come home. That's what we like about Cruz. But I don't see him winning. Right now, just the way the tides are turning, Trump is so well liked by the moderates. I mean, what I see usually here on Facebook are obviously conservative people who feel like us. But where Trump is, it's hard to tell where Trump is. I mean, it's like he's all over the place. But the thing
he's a phenomenon.
He is, and we have Trump to thank for getting as many people back involved in politics, because no other candidate in my lifetime has had more effect on getting Americans back involved in the political system. And that is very, very important. And with that, I'll pass it over to Glenn, okay?
Well, you all make an amazing points as usual. And, Scott, you mentioned about the language and that Donald Trump uses, and that I think you nailed it. He's really the only one that gets away with it. And and I think why. I think it comes down to, you guys mentioned about Patton also. Donald Trump refers to Patton a lot too. He uses his name. He said Patton wouldn't do this, Patton wouldn't do that. So you tie all this together, and I think it comes down to two words. He commands respect, and I think a lot of people in this day and age, with your social media, your television, where it's back to Kennedy days or Reagan days, where they didn't have this social media. So he's out there, and now there's television where it's everywhere. He's got a lot of people that in this day and age we would never have had, 7-10 years, well, even 7 to 10 years ago. You still had, the Facebook, you still had certain internet stuff, but not like this. And you didn't see people, way back, they were on radio, and whatever. You didn't really get to see too much of them on the TV. But with him, he's kind of got his hand in everything, and so therefore he's admired drawing people from every age group and people that were. We've talked about this before many times, where he is changing the face of how politics is running, and he's doing it on so many different levels, and I think it comes down to he commands respect because people are fed up. He's tapped into so much anger where people are angry. They're just fed up with things, and he has that persona. He has the voice, and he has the stature. He's not a small man. So he's got so many different levels that he's so attracted to, and of course he has the haters too, but you're always going to have that no matter who you are and what you're doing and wherever you are. So that's a given, and he understands that. The difference between him and so many other people that have even ever ran is that he has the background also. He's built something. He's went from literally nothing. Yes, he got a loan from his dad and whatever have you, but he made good of that. Anybody can win the lottery, and we find them they're broke. So therefore, if you want to refer to that, he commands respect because he's been there, done that over and over and over again, and he has the voice. So when you mention about the language that he uses, I cringe. I do. I mean, I think he's great. I really think he's great for this country and for the conservative movement and bringing the parties together again. I don't know whether they'll ever get as close as back in the John F. Kennedy days, but I pray so. But at the same time, he has this language that I in certain ways he handles himself with his words, if you will, and I just cringe. I sometimes go, oh my God, like this, right? And you're right, Scott. I would actually, say, hey, I wouldn't be doing that, but it's working for him. So it's like how, I'm a Christian, as we all are here, and you mentioned about we don't cuss on the air and whatever, and that's because we choose not to, because that's our core. That's our foundation. That's everything that we stand for. We try not to in our everyday life or whatever. So therefore, it's a respecting our audience also. But our biggest audience is Jesus Christ. He's the one that's listening to us the most. So we have that. Whereas you guys touched into where Donald Trump is tapping into people that even they're moderates or they're really not. Maybe they're not Christian. Maybe some of them are. Maybe some of them aren't. But I think he's getting a buy. I think is a good word. He's getting a buy with some of the language he uses because it's the bigger picture people are seeing that what he is doing to unite this country, to unite the Republican Party, and in the end, he's going to draw. I believe, like you said, you guys have tapped into some really good key points here. He's going to draw. He's going to close the gap more and more between the Democratic field and the GOP field. I see it happening. He's bringing a lot of these Democrats over and the independents, and the silent majority is almost not silent anymore. As the weeks go on, we're seeing the movements in our communities. You guys talked about that. I see it happening. And it's exciting, Scott. You referred to the cocaine, where we're on this it's a major rush, It's because he is bringing this to where we are excited, and so therefore the things that he does do, I should say, that are not really something that I would do or you would do, Scott, or Dan or Jennifer, because we don't have that with us, but he. Because we're not that type of person, I guess. But he's bringing everybody together, and how many times we heard controversy from him, and then all of a sudden he comes out smelling like roses. It's like gold, and that it takes a remarkable person to be able to do that with 300 million people here, and I'm not saying that everyone's voting, but that brings me to a second point. When you look at the numbers that have just come out in Iowa, And in New Hampshire, we don't know 100% yet, but we're seeing some of them. Like the Iowa, he closed in second. Okay, folks, he's closed in second, very close second to Ted Cruz. Donald Trump's numbers alone brought out more people than anyone that was ever first in Iowa, and that tells you something that he is. It's. You know, I think God is making a movement here too, folks. I really do think God is you know, because people are waking up a little more. They're bringing themselves back to Jesus. We're seeing a lot of this, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it. And that is why I am excited, very much excited, because this has been needed for a long time. The last point I'm going to make is, we've made this before. I believe that Donald Trump will win the nomination and he will win the presidency. And I believe that Ted Cruz will be his vice president. And I see it only as him as a one-term president, just for 4 years, grooming Ted Cruz, because I think that they're going to be like a co-presidency. I don't think it's going to come off as a vice president. I think they're both going to join so close because they want Ted Cruz to take over in the 4 years so he can be there for 8 years. And then we have a 12-year GOP and we need to. This is what needs to happen. So if they're going to unify this country like they are right now, and if that should happen, I think we've got a very strong future coming down the pike here. And with that, I'll hand it over to Scott.
Well, and I agree with you. And I'll tell you, I'm going to start where you ended, Glenn, because you and Dan both said this, and I agree with you both. You right now, with collection of support, Donald Trump has got a pretty clear win heading from here on out. And let me say, in writing for Joe for America, one of the things I do every day, first day I do, is I look at every poll I can find. And polls by themselves are worthless, folks. But when you put them all together, you can get a real feel for momentum, and you can get a real feel for where things are at. And Donald Trump is king of that right now, very, very well. He has got a big chunk, and part of that chunk are people that haven't participated for a little while. Some of them Democrats, some of them Republicans. And some of them that are Democrats that participated on the other side the last 2 terms and really got bit. He's collecting a lot of those. But I'll tell you, Ted Cruz has got a very clear path, what we call in politics, in election politics, a path to a win. And here's why. And Iowa is your bellwether. New Hampshire is very far separated from the country, and of course we're going to see New York, California, both be kind of like New Hampshire, but the bulk of the states are more like Iowa, where you've got conservatives, you've got moderates, and of course you got the Democrats on the other side. But New Hampshire is really kind of lopsided. But Iowa, we knew for approximately 5 weeks, unless Ted Cruz's momentum dropped or some unseen thing happened, that Ted Cruz would win, even though in the polls Donald Trump was a little bit ahead of him. The reason why we knew that is because of ground game, and this is always important. You've got to remember this when you're looking at the polls, and it's primary season specifically, because it's really huge here, and it's true in the general as well. But here it's huge because you've got a lot of different people, and some have ground game and some don't, and it doesn't seem to be a lot in the middle. They've either decided they're going to use that, or they've decided they're not going to. Ted Cruz's ground game is the best out there right now. You used to be able to say that about Rand Paul, or really Ron Paul. But right now, Ted Cruz's ground game is better than anybody else's, and it's better than anybody's ever had in the history of primaries. Ted Cruz won. He beat a powerful incumbent, David Dewhurst. He beat him using the ground game, just like Eric Cantor, just like I believe J.D. Wennereg's going to do. Just like we could have done had there not been shady politics down in Mississippi. We could have gotten rid of Thad Cochran. I think that could have been done. there is something really interesting here, and it was just, I'm watching Fox News as we're doing the show, and just kind of, I'm watching the closed captions. But there was something they were interested covering a while ago. The winners in these primaries have been the ones that have spent the least amount of money, and the losers have all spent a whole lot of money. And we're seeing this pattern that money doesn't do it anymore. It just doesn't guarantee you anything. Rodney Lee and I have had this discussion going for like 3 years now, back and forth. He keeps saying, well, but look what Jeb's money is. And I'm here to say, finally, that argument is dispelled, because Jeb spent more money than all of the other candidates combined, folks. And he's flailing there. He's getting excited over a 4th-place win in New Hampshire. Ground game, folks. Now, here's the thing. As you look at the polls going forward into South Carolina, Nevada, and then Tuesday in March, when we have 11 different states, Texas being one of them, when you look at all those polls, what you see is you see Ted Cruz in enough states, close enough to jump Ted Cruz or Donald Trump in the polls for a win like he did in Iowa, because he's got a huge ground game and Donald Trump doesn't. Now, why is that important? Here's why it's important. You can only stir excitement up in people so much. What it really takes to win elections, and the elections that are won are the ones that do this, especially when it's an uphill battle. That excitement does not bring out everybody. Now, the Democrats have known this for a long time. The Democrats have been aces at this. It's one of the reasons why they've had so much control over the last 20, 30 years. Even before the Internet, they were networking, and they were getting people out. And on the day of vote, man, if they got to send your pet canary over to your house to remind you to go vote, they're going to send their pet canary over there. They've been doing that. Ted Cruz's people, on the days of these primaries, are going to be out going and getting all of the people that were excited about Ted Cruz, but just really were a little bit too late. They just needed one last push. Donald Trump does not have the organization on the ground to do that. Now, the question will be, and here's how you decide, and you can look at the polls. It was obvious in Iowa that Ted Cruz was going to come in first and Donald Trump a close second. It's been obvious for weeks. Nobody really talked about it, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist. The question will be, Dan and Glenn, in those states, are there enough where there is a large enough gap between the polls and the numbers that Donald Trump is getting and Ted Cruz is getting, or the second-place person? Of course, there's nobody really. Carson's gone and Paul's gone, so nobody else has really got ground game, which is a real huge reason. Ted Cruz is the only one left in the game, folks, that's got ground game. That's huge. That is huge in this. That's the story of this, is Ben Carson's gone and Rand Paul is gone, and they were the ground games. They were the competing ground games. As you go through, are there enough places where Ted Cruz is close enough to Donald Trump where that ground game is going to jump him over him when it actually comes to the vote, like it did in Iowa? As we look forward, and as the Ted Cruz team has been looking forward, they've been saying for a long time that as long as the momentum continues, and it has, they've got what it takes to beat Donald Trump. Now, I've been aware of an understanding that as of 6 months ago, Donald Trump really didn't necessarily want to be president. He wanted to be a kingmaker, and that came from inside both Trump circles, from some very high and some very well-known people. Actually, in fact. And I'll tell you, Donald Trump never set up a ground game. And the possibility is there. There is a very good win ability for Ted Cruz. If it happens or not, I don't think anybody could predict at this point. I think it's going to come down as we continue to go down through momentum. The one thing I do have full confidence in is that it will be Donald Trump and Ted Cruz throughout the rest of the way. There are going to be a couple of places where maybe a Christie or Christie's gone, a Kasich can come up to second or third place. But I think everywhere that Ted Cruz can't win, Donald Trump wins. I think every place that Ted Cruz can't win, Donald Trump wins. And that pushes everybody out. And Marco Rubio was the only thing up until now that could upset that victory. And thank you, Chris Christie, for knocking Rubio out of the ballpark. I will be eternally grateful. Rubio got real huge cred last week in that last primary. And, of course, Chris Christie helped him destroy it at the debate. And I think I'm willing to say Rubio's out at this point, that there's no place down the line. He's got enough momentum to catch it up. So I think it's going to be Trump, Cruz, Cruz, Trump, either way. And I'm going to tell you, folks, I don't care which way it is. I'm happy with both ways. I really like Glenn's idea. But I'll tell you, my favorite is I'd love to see Donald Trump vice president so he can stand in front of the Senate and speak and turn that into reality TV for us so people are paying attention to what's going on the Senate floor. I think that all by itself could be the biggest game changer in our country if that happened. On to Donald. I'm going to a couple more things, and then we'll pass it around the table again. As far as Donald Trump and how he gets away with what he says, I'll tell you why he gets away with it. I know exactly why he gets away with it. The first thing he did when he started out the gate was he kicked over the wall of political correctness on Donald Trump. He started out saying, I'm not playing by that rule. When he declared that, it made the political correctness argument against him mute. Now, I'm going to tell you, folks, Donald Trump has been telling us for a long time that he was going to knock out political correctness. And I'm going to tell you, he proved it. He proved it can be done, and he proved that he could do it because he did it within his own campaign. There's nothing he can say. The news media gets all excited, and it doesn't work. They shoot. The news media shoots. They shoot at Donald Trump's forehead. And he just stands there. You know, it's kind of like a science fiction thing where you got somebody that just, takes bullets. Or, I've been watching. There's some really good. I was never a superhero guy, but I'll tell you, The Flash and The Arrow, there's some good shows out there right now going on with the superheroes. And sometimes somebody goes to shoot at them, and they shoot, and it's like Superman. They just stand there. They don't understand. He already knocked down the wall of political correctness. He doesn't work by that rule, folks. And nobody expects him to work by that rule because he declared it null and void. And that's what we've got to do. That's how we defeat political correctness. And I'm going to tell you, folks, if we defeat political correctness, we defeat socialism. If we don't defeat political correctness, we do not defeat socialism. Yeah, I know I'm preaching. I started to feel like I was up there on the stage. But I'm going to tell you, there's something else about Donald Trump. What did he do during his speech tonight? I'm going to tell you, they're railing over his speech tonight. Best speech ever I'm already hearing from a primary win. Totally different than anything other. And I just listened to a little bit of it. It was a lot of stuff that he normally says, but about winning and going forward. And then he complimented all of his competitors. And, he throws these things, but then he turns around and he says, nah, I was just kidding. I was just throwing that out. You just say some things sometimes. And that's the full circle on political correctness. We should be able to say that. Jennifer, I should be able to say, you're a baboon in anger, and you know me well enough to know that I would never mean that. And your first reaction, instead of, he called me a baboon, would be, Scott's lost his mind. There's something wrong over there. we live in a world where, especially us, we use a different kind of language. But I'm going to tell you, it is the freedom to speak our mind and say whatever we want about anybody, no matter how we want to say it, with the exception of a very few little things that are illegal to say, like fire in a crowded building, which I think you should have consequences for doing something like that. And don't say gun while you're standing in line at the airport, whatever you do. But, we've got the freedom of speech here. And Donald Trump, he throws these barbs, and he turns around and says, I love the guy. I respect the guy. And I'm going to tell you, it's all a show. And every day you're seeing the reality TV of the Republican primary. And here's Donald Trump throwing another one. And if it doesn't come out right, he apologizes. I'd rather have somebody who does that than somebody that just says whatever and never apologizes. When was the last time you heard Barack Obama apologize for all kinds of things he's done? And so that's, and again, folks, Donald Trump is not necessarily my favorite all the way around. There's some things, I've got some issues with Donald Trump. But, man, the big things are absolutely huge. Dan Wilson, I think you're really, really on to something. And I'm going to really think about this. I want us to talk about this next week, so you get on it and I'll get on it. I haven't thought that far ahead. I hadn't thought that really that far ahead. But Donald Trump does. He takes, as a nominee, a presidential nominee, he takes New York. I think he just takes New York. I think he does a great job in New York. I think they love him in New York. I think he's got a lot of money there. I think he takes New York. But I also think he takes California for a lot of the same reasons. He's got money out there in California to start off with. There's some Trump buildings out there as well. But you've also got a Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of mentality out there that really, really likes a Donald Trump kind of Republican. They do. They were Reagan. They liked the outspokenness. That's California. I think Donald Trump easily pushes Florida. I think, Dan, that Donald Trump has an easier time taking blue states and turning them red than he does taking some purple states and turning them red. I think California and New York are easy pickoffs for him in a general election, and that crushes. Man, all he's got to do is take New York, and he makes it a landslide if we go just by what we barely lost electoral delegates last time. You start pushing it the other way. So I think you're on something, Dan. I think that gives us another huge plus for Donald Trump. I know he beats Hillary, and I know he beats Bernie. Can you imagine a socialist up against a billionaire?
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine? I haven't seen anybody write on that. I better write on that. The socialist against the billionaire. If they said a while ago, Bernie Sanders yelled out the top 1%. They said on Fox News that's about 500 people in the country. And Donald Trump is one of them. Mm-hmm. And that's what Bernie's all over. He's all over the Donald Trumps. Can you imagine what a fascinating... And that's where, Glenn, I have to agree with you. I've been praying for years. I've been praying for specifically almost 14 years now for a better tomorrow. And not for me, for my nieces. And boy, I've been worried. I've been worried for years. Seeing the direction we're going morally and ethically, and the direction the churches are going, and everything. I've been really kind of worried. But what I've been feeling the last few weeks, and what I expressed to Jennifer, and I kind of thought she was going to see that. It was blatant. It's been blatant. I'm seeing people that have been really discouraged getting really excited, and I'm seeing that. At the same time, Glenn, I really do see God's hand in giving us another chance. Really
Amen.
do. There's a lot of people in this country praying, and we weren't praying 10 years ago. I was praying. I use we collectively. But prayer, you didn't hear a whole lot about, boy, we got to pray for our nation. We've got to pray for this. We got to pray for that. We've seen that grow over the last 8 years with Barack Obama to a phenomenon. I mean, there's all kinds of prayer groups all over the internet. And Jennifer Montrose, for a long time, was involved in a Sunday night prayer group that called in a conference call and had prayer. And I don't know that I know God will turn things around for man when man asks and pleads correctly. He did it in the Old Testament, and I don't know that we haven't brushed by a real scary run with heading totally down a socialistic platform. And I think Barack Obama has just done a lot of destruction. But I think Bernie Sanders is going to be the savior. I really do. I think he's going to win this primary. I think, man, he's building momentum at just the right time politically. The timing is everything. And this is exactly the kind of momentum he needs to be building going forward. And I think he does. I think he topples Hillary. I think the next couple of weeks are really bad on her in the news cycle. I think this has given Bernie some momentum. He's decried all the people that said Bernie can't win. He proved them wrong. And with that, I have yacked enough. I will pass it back around. Jennifer Montrose, what do you think?
Well, I'll tell you. It just shows you what kind of, we have a lot of young kids being really indoctrinated with the Common Core to be voting for Bernie. I'm telling you, when you do the man on the street and you go around and ask college students who the vice president is, they can't even tell you. It explains how Bernie beat out Hillary for sure. But I'm telling you, the excitement this go around, is just, it's better than what we had in 2012. I think, October of 2011, when we were having our straw poll here for the Republican Assembly here in Alabama, and Herman Cain won the straw poll, and he won the Florida straw poll, and it was just crazy back then. And there were so many people that were so excited about what was going on, and but things took a turn when Romney got elected. And there were so many people that just, were so fed up and wanted to stay home because they felt like their vote didn't count. So why bother? And I think people have finally said, this time around that we can't let this happen. They saw what staying home does, so they're trying their darndest in the primary to make a difference. And you're right. Ground game is everything. That's the reason why I think Cruz is doing as well as he is doing, and you got to give it to those people that are boots on the ground, Ken Broland and, Brad Marston and so many other people that we know that are out there trying to make a difference, and, Trey Edwards and I have a lot of my friends that are involved in that. But I will tell you, I think what really resonates with the American people is they're tired of other countries perceiving us as being weak. And they want somebody that is going to take a stand, that will not back down and not be bullied. And they're not going to be bullied by corporations and, the IRS and all these Dems that are in there trying to, shut things down and all that, because he's what was it he said about about the bombings in Europe and all that stuff, all that terrorist stuff going on over there? He said if they had been allowed to carry, if the guns trial was going in the opposite direction, things would have been so much different. And there'd be a different story being reported today. And we see that all across the United States, people are fighting to protect their Second Amendment rights in the midst of this gun war, this battle against, treating the Constitution like it's just a piece of paper versus those of us who really understand what it really means. And it's I think it's time that the American people have voices be heard. The lamestream media is not reporting it accurately. That is so obvious. But they're not. You know, look at what's going on. This is definitely, you know, you would never, I don't know, expect things to be the way they are, but it's definitely, you know, you got to pay attention to what the people are saying. I mean, when you've got a candidate who's not being politically correct, he doesn't do that at all. And he just says things off the, you know, like off the cuff. And people are excited. I mean, that whole room, when he made those comments, that whole room was in an uproar, laughing. They thought it was great. And then he, on the back end of all that, he wins the New Hampshire primary. And look at the percentages that he won by. I don't think this kind of stuff, I don't think people are, I mean, are people really getting offended? I think if people want something to get offended about, they're gonna find it. And it's just, people are ready. I mean, when he said, "Make America Great Again," I think that resonates with the majority of the people. You know?
Mhm.
So, you know, it's just definitely going to be interesting when we get down to this, you know, southern states. When we get down to the SEC primary states, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. You know, between Arkansas, Texas, and Alabama, and Georgia, and Virginia, and you know, it's. I'm probably missing a few, but it's going to be interesting to see. You know, so and he's still planning on coming back to Alabama twice before the end. So we'll see how that goes. But you know, it's crazy. You know, on another subject real quick, when we talk about Oregon, I don't know how many people actually know that Ammon Bundy is being kept in solitary confinement. And the rogue reporter, Pete Santilli, is also in solitary confinement. And, you know, you've got these protesters in Ferguson that did all kinds of obvious crimes, yet we have peaceful protesters that are in solitary confinement. And you have to wonder why. You know, this is the kind of thing that I think that the reason that Trump is resonating with so many people is they are tired of what they've been getting. They're tired of the Constitution being trampled on. And here we have a guy who is standing up for the American people. He's saying enough is enough. You know, so, Dan, what about you?
Well, I agree with you, Jennifer. What's happened out there at the Hammond Ranch is totally unexcusable. They violated his Fourth Amendment rights. They violated the state rights via the 10th Amendment. They are going into illegal land grabs. The federal government is basically trampling on the Constitution. And there are enough of us out there who see the Constitution as a living and breathing document. And we still hold that sacred, even though we might differ in our political views. The Constitution is still very well respected amongst the majority of Americans, with exception to those on the far, far left who are in the middle of this progressive socialist movement, because they want to change our country completely. And Obama was the first one to start laying the groundwork on that, which is why this election is so important. And it resonated with the rest of the country. In several precincts in New Hampshire, the police had to shut off the line because it was so long that they couldn't get it finished within the time frames. That says a lot. This is the highest turnout in New Hampshire history. And I think you're going to see this in every state. You're going to see people who have been quiet and have allowed this to happen for years and years and years. And they're finally fed up with it. I know anybody from the baby boomer generation to the early 60s generation, they're all fed up with it because we remember how it used to be. Back in the days of John F. Kennedy, for instance, you know, when John F. Kennedy gave his inaugural speech, he said, he goes, and now I pose this question to you. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And that was the foundation of his administration. And that resonated very, very strong. There was a lot of patriotism that still existed. And that was taken away beginning in 1964 by LBJ. And he created the welfare system because what he wanted to do is he wanted to essentially enslave the black community within the welfare system. And he knew after a few generations you could do that. And he has accomplished that. And there's a lot of people on our side, on the Republican side, saying this is not right. Because we believed so much in our Declaration of Independence, where it says all men are created equal. And as time went on, and blacks and whites started to bond more, and that happened right up to the Obama administration, and Obama has set us back 40 years. Now we have to reestablish something we have worked very hard to change. Now with what's going on in the elections, as you said, Scott, you really can't. Trump just says things. And what he does is it's like casting a line out into the water. He goes to sees who bites, and if he doesn't get anything, he apologizes and moves on and casts another line. But what he's going to do, and even though the governor of New York is threatening to run for president, I doubt he's going to have the momentum that Trump has built. Because, again, the governor of New York is establishment. And that has become a dirty word in this country. Trump brings he's giving our country pride. And like you, Scott, I've been praying for, and Glenn and Jennifer, I've been praying for years for somebody, for a savior for our country. I never believed it would be a person like Donald Trump, but hey, any port in storm is good. I don't mind him. I'll cringe when he says some of the things he does because I don't speak that way publicly or privately. But he uses that kind of like a cattle prod to get people to react. And it is very effective. But the one thing he keeps on bringing back to the core is he's bringing pride back to our country. He says I'm going to make America great again. And this is what is resonating throughout the country. We are seeing people actually getting excited, not only on our side, but on the other side too. Because we're seeing somebody who can bring our country back to where it was. We are proud of our heritage. And no, we weren't perfect. But what country is? Countries are made up of people. And there is no single person on this earth today who is perfect. Trump is reaching into an area that was forbidden politically. And he has taken the political correctness and shattered it. And this is something, I was kind of explaining this the other day to some people, and I said, sometimes you need a bulldozer to just make a hole through the line. And then we can go back and fix the parts that weren't right. And Trump is that bulldozer. And it's through him, because I believe when he said he was going to bring back Christmas, I believe him 100%. And I believe he will bring Christianity back into our country. And he will place God as the center of our nation and the foundation of our nation. We look on the other side now. You got a criminal going against a socialist. I mean, the Democratic Party doesn't have a prayer of doing anything. It's just a matter of how much are they going to lose by. Personally, I think the Democratic Party is going to take a hard enough hit during this election that it's going to take them years to recover from. It's going to be very, very similar to what took place right after the Civil War. You're going to see several reigns, maybe 4 or 5 Republican presidents followed in succession. And Trump is not going to lose this because he's using the Electoral College as his ace in the hole. Because if he takes New York and California and Florida, and need I say more? I mean, you don't have much left after that. You have Texas, and that's about it. And Texas will go along with Trump or Cruz, either way. I mean, so according to the Electoral College, you're going to see Trump Cruz own it. I'd be very, very surprised if Trump loses New York, because he is so well liked there, and he is turning around and saying things that are just throwing the establishment on both sides back on their heels. They don't know how to respond. They think that the super PACs are going to bail them out, and the game no longer involves that. You see, the grassroots movement, Furman Kane actually changed the rules. and by the grassroots movement has changed everything. And now the rules are totally out the door because it's turning back to the people. And the next thing we need to do while Trump or Cruz is in office is we need to start the states to begin to start taking back control. And once they take back control, they themselves are going to be the key to reducing the size of the federal government. Because every time we take over a law or we take over something like our education or environmental protection or things like that, we're removing a department from the federal government. And one of the suggestions I was making is that what states should start doing is start putting a fund together and start collecting money, any surplus money, and putting it into that fund until it's strong enough, and then take ourselves out of the Social Security system and providing for our poor ourselves and those who retired. So transfer Medicaid and Medicare back to the state. And that's a big chunk of money out of the federal government. Right. And the state can do a heck of a lot better job managing that money than the federal government. And if we continue to do that, you're just going to chip away at the power of the federal government until it's down to where it was according to the Constitution of the United States. And with that, I'll pass it over to Glenn. Glenn?
Glenn, before we do that, we've got somebody that's called in on 407 area code and pressed the button that said they want to talk. So let's bring them in. Caller from 407 area code. Who is this? State your name and what you want to say. .407 area code?
Yes, somebody just outside of Orlando.
Okay, going once, going twice? All righty. Okay, go ahead, Glenn. I wanted to get them in there. They'd been holding for a little bit. So go ahead, take it away, Glenn.
Oh, no worries. We're always welcoming callers. Anybody wants to call in, go for it. Awesome. No, you all touch on some great points here, and Dan, you mentioned about Donald Trump and not expecting that Donald Trump would be the one that would actually help do this, bring this country together, whatever. But I have to admit, in 2011, I remember saying and to other people that I wished he would run. I really did. At that time, I thought, what we had at the time, I really, really wished that he was the one that, he would have done it back then. But I understand now more of what I didn't understand then and the reasons to why he didn't run then. But yeah, so just kind of throw that in there that, I've been wanting this for 5 years now. So this is just I've been licking my lips ever since on June 16th, ever since he, come out with his candidacy. So I just and of course I didn't expect all of this much of this. I expected that he would be basically in the face of people and whatnot as far as other candidates go and whatever have you, and this political correctness. I knew he didn't like that, but to this degree, I just didn't really expect to be, this much impact, and it's a welcome blessing, let me tell you, because this is what this country's needed. So I wanted to touch on that. You all are making some very good insights here and whatnot, and as usual, it's not repetitive. It's just some new things that are coming down the pike, or stuff that just revelation of different things that are coming through, and it's awesome. It's really, really, I'm sure it's entertaining for the people, the folks that are listening, and that because everybody has a great perspective on this, and Donald Trump and Ted Cruz together, I'm part of Donald Trump's ground game, actually. I'm making phone calls and stuff like that for him, so I'm getting some information that his ground game is about to get even bigger. So, and he actually mentioned it today. And this is what I like about Donald Trump is, he said he made a statement that maybe it was yesterday, that his ground game over the last week, he said something to the effect of it's gotten a lot better over the last week or something along that line. I can't remember the exact quote, but he admits some of the things that he maybe he's kind of failed on or whatever have you, and he's not this kind of persona that people come out there and they think that he's all arrogant and whatever like this. He does have some tendencies of that, but I wanted to bring up a point that a lot of people aren't given coverage for it, whether it be like of course on TV and of course the mainstream media. But the other night when when they had some problems with audio for the debate. Donald Trump pulled one of the classiest moves I've seen from someone that's been accused of being a narcissist. I mean, I just can't see how what he did will just throw out that narcissistic word attached to him, because what he did was Ben Carson could not hear his name being called as he was coming out to the stage. He didn't hear. It was so loud and so whatever, and they had audio problems, whatever. He didn't hear. Donald Trump come around the corner, and he saw Ben Carson stand there in this awkward position, and he stood there with him as other people were going by him and whatever. So Donald Trump didn't even come out. He waited, and because he didn't want Ben Carson to be standing there by himself, feeling awkward or whatever. And it takes a certain personality, to actually on the fly, right, just spontaneously to be able to react like he did. And you know what? No one else did it. Everybody else kept going by, and they would brush Donald Trump's shoulder and smile and all kind of stuff, right? Did they not know why? I mean, it's just one of these things that you won't hear a lot of talk about. And I have to come to Donald's defense on that, because it was not planned. This was something that it just happened. So I don't know if y'all heard about that or not, because we've not talked about this or whatever since 3 nights ago when that happened. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because I thought that was a class act move that he did. And for anyone that believes he's just total arrogance, he's narcissistic, and it's all about him, he's selfish, and he's this and he's that. I've heard a lot of people from this ground game and from these other people, like his family, of course, but also workers, people that work for him. There's people coming out on the news now that work for him that even with his with his TV show, The Apprentice and whatnot, people that he's helped in so many ways, with the show itself, and even since then, he is a class act in a lot of ways that people are not giving him credit for, and they're not giving him credit for that because the reason they don't want him to be the nominee, and they don't want him to be the president. But he's had this for decades and decades, where people have taken him the wrong way because of his approach to certain things. They assume a lot more that's down that road, and it's not. He crosses the line a little bit, but they kick him down the road, and making it sound like he's worse than what he really is. And you won't hear. I've not heard of anybody that's worked for him, and I mean that would have come out by now. Seriously, I mean, you look at, he's been, what's this, 8 months, something like that now, since he's ran? I don't know, trying to do the math of the months here, but anyways, you would have heard a lot of this stuff since then. So now they're just trying to make something from literally nothing with him or whatever. And I think that, I know if someone, like I said, I don't like everything Donald Trump, how he says things, and some of his issues maybe I don't really agree with, but I will I will defend him because it's the truth, and the truth will set you free. So therefore, when you see things like this happen out there, and even if you don't like someone, I mean, I've had people in my life that I don't like, but if somebody tried to tell me something that I knew was wrong about someone that I didn't even like, I would defend them anyway. You know why? Because I have Christ in me. And that's why. Because I will not be swayed because of masses, because the truth is what will set us free, and anything other than that, we're only fooling ourselves, and we might fool other people. But the bottom line is your credibility is shot. So when you have a person that does a move like Donald Trump with how much of a class act that was, I really, really look at someone like that and I go, you know what? It that needs a voice. That needs attention, because it's real. It's true. It's what he is. And for all the stuff that he does that I don't like, I really liked what he did there. And you know what? That's to me is incredible. And I'll pass it over to you, Scott.
Well, exactly, and I have to agree with you 100%. It was a class act. I watched that. I didn't watch the debate, but I went back and I watched a bunch of clips from the debate. I just didn't have a real block of time to just sit down and watch all the way through the debate. But I saw that, and obviously somebody in the back was not doing their job correctly, because that was a mess. If you watched that whole thing, it was a mess. It was like dominoes tumbling. But Donald Trump, he did. He stood there in unison. And I'll tell you, folks, Donald Trump gives a lot of rhetoric. I don't believe half of it. When he says some of the things about some of these people, I don't believe for 5 seconds he's trying to be mean and cruel. I believe that he just knows how to work the media. He knows what to throw out there that the media will bite onto. He's throwing the bones to the dogs, folks. And they're biting every time. It's what he's got attached to the bone that you need to start paying attention to. That's what you got to start paying attention to. And he is doing an incredible thing. Now, I will say this about ground game, Glenn. You can't build ground game in a month. Ted Cruz started working on this ground game 4 years ago. They started working on Ted Cruz for president not shortly long after he won his Senate campaign. Ben Carson, 2 years ago, when I got here to Texas 2 years ago, already had a very strong ground game nationwide. And of course, Rand Paul benefited from his father's organization that's been around for a decade and a half. Really, Ron Paul was the first person to really effectively use the tools and really to define, when I say ground game, what it means. Now, we all here understand what it means. I think most of our listeners do. Most of our listeners are grassroots-oriented and understand what that means. But Ron Paul was doing it a long time ago. It takes years, and it definitely takes months, because it's not just about the people. He's got a lot of supporters willing to get out and do things. It's almost like a church. You've got to have your organizational structure. You've got to have your communication set down, and then the people got to really get to know each other. And then you have a seasoned ground game, and that's what Ben Carson had. Unfortunately, he came crashing, but that's Ted Cruz at this point has a ground game that there is nothing like it. I'll tell you, we got an article getting ready to come out of Joe for America here soon about some of the stuff going on, and I got to give a shout out to one of our closest friends, Jennifer Montrose, and I, very close friend, Kenneth Brolin, who I have watched over the last 4 years grow with me as somebody who'd never really been involved in politics before. And Ken and I have been very, very close friends throughout the last 4 years, much like I was discussing with Jennifer, attached to each other's projects. Most of the time, if he was doing something, I was helping him. If I was doing something, he was helping me. Ken Brolin has taken the position, which I'm sure is now wrapping up, in Iowa, of heading up Camp Cruz, which to me is the most brilliant thing I've seen in a long time. They basically took the concept of a team and put four walls and a door and put them in kind of like campus housing. And I'm going to tell you, there has been a procession in Iowa from Texas like you would not believe. I've got friends that have been up there 3 and 4 times. Some of our well-known friends have been up there. Nancy Hayes. Rodney was going to go up there. He didn't get to go up there. But man, I'm going to tell you, what they accomplished, that was the results you saw in the Iowa caucus, that was the result of what's going on with Ken Brolin and Camp Cruz. Because they really took that grassroots organization up there and gave them, what is it they put in the cars, nitro? You get a shot of nitro. The last 2 months, that was a shot of nitro in the organizational efforts. And it was just absolutely incredible. So we got to give a huge shout out. Ken Brolin, I'll tell you, we talked about you so you can listen, but you know I love you. I can't wait. Jennifer, guess where Ken Brolin's moving?
Let me guess, South Carolina?
No. Well, he might be going there, but guess where he's moving?
Dallas.
He's moving. The stars at night are big and bright, and Brolin's moving
You have
to
that
Texas.
effect on people, Scott.
So excited about that, Jennifer Montrose. You know that I am. And with that, I'm going to pass
on people.
Jennifer and let you take it around. We're sitting at, I think, our last 15 minutes, so everybody can get their concluding remarks. But Jennifer Montrose.
You know, we have some pretty awesome friends that we've developed over the years. We can be supporting different candidates and still remain friends and still come together in the general election, and that's what I like. I mean, you know, we all have our picks and chooses of candidates in various races across the United States for local elections, for nationwide and state elections and such. And we've been able to pull some really good, you know, friendships together and do things like Iowa 8 for Ohio 8 for J.D. Wintereg, and you know, there's just been so many things that have gone on, and it's you know, and at the end of the day, we've all been able to pull ourselves together and remain pretty close as friendships go, and you know, and that I'm grateful to see, and I'm really praying that you know, because I've got some friends who just say they just cannot get on board with Trump for anything, but I'm really praying that come the general election, whoever that candidate is on the Republican ticket, that we all band together and do everything necessary. Hold your nose if you have to, because I certainly am. You know, I did it with Romney, but we had too many people that just stayed home or wrote somebody else in, and it's never worked. I've never seen it work. You know, and you know, do your part to educate your friends. When you know, the Constitution is alive and well. We know that there are people that want to squash it. They want to totally rewrite it, you know, and it's just it's a mess, you know. And I sure wish we had the fair tax. Another story for another time. But a friend of mine that's in learning how to do taxes to actually make money as a tax preparer and stuff, and just some things that are going on that she's finding out, and this is just crazy stuff, but hopefully things will change if we can get, you know, a good, solid Republican elected into office this go-around. Dan?
I agree with you, Jennifer, and we have, as you said, we have coalesced into great friends, even though sometimes we may disagree. But, you know, you and Scott and me and now Glenn and Gary, who's coming into our ranks, the friendships and the bonds that we have created amongst each other is stronger than anything. And if people just start understanding that you can have differences, but if you have the common goal, which all of us do, I mean, that never wavers one iota. We have the common objective, and that's what we're after. And when we see something wrong, like what's going on with Ammon Bundy, it needs to be brought out and it needs to be told. And I will make a promise here and now and to the country that there will be an article followed within the next week on this that's going to spell out everything that is taking place. And we're going to let the FBI know and the BLM know they can't do this to us. And when it comes down to the elections, like you said, I had to, Jennifer, I had to bring a barf bag with me when I had to vote for Romney last time. He was the last person I wanted to vote for. But I threw my ballot in, and it was for Romney, because I knew the choices were Romney or 4 more years of Obama. And anything was better than 4 more years of Obama. And you knew that, Jennifer. Scott knew it. All of us knew it. Except for these people who got so angry against the establishment they refused to vote. And that's not how to solve a problem. When it comes down to our political system, the only way you can solve a problem is staying involved, and even if it means barfing and voting for somebody. Because Romney wouldn't have made things any worse. He would have kept things at a status quo, pretty much like Bush did. And he might have done a little damage, but it would have been nothing compared to what Obama did. So people stay in there, stay involved, and keep on and wake more people up, because I'm loving this, because I'm seeing more people get involved in the political system, and this is the way our country was designed to do and how it was designed to work. So spread the word, get people to vote, and get people involved. And with that, I'm sending it over to Glenn for his final thoughts.
Well, yes, I agree with you guys. Yeah, but it's definitely exciting times, and I don't know, it's incredible. It really is, to see what's going on with everything, and everybody, more and more people getting involved in that. I just think it's incredible. Well, I guess we're getting to the top of the hour, so I better pass it over to Scott there.
Well, and definitely we come to the top of another great show, great discussion, a lot of important things. I'll tell you, I'm serious, Glenn. This is like, for addicts of politics, this is heroin. And, of course, primary seasons can tend to be sometimes. It's when you get involved, and Jennifer, I know I was one of those people that you were had in mind of who was not going to get involved in this presidential election until after the nominee was decided. I didn't want to go down that road again. I was going to stay local. And I really haven't gotten involved in helping anybody. I haven't helped Ted Cruz much. I haven't helped Donald Trump much, even though I've enjoyed both of them. I have surely enjoyed watching as this take goes down. I'll tell you that the one thing they throw against Donald Trump that I absolutely think is the dumbest, most idiotic argument you can make against Donald Trump. And I'll tell you where it came from a lot was the Carly Fiorina camp and the Marco Rubio camp. Saw it a lot. And it was this. Donald Trump's just a reality TV star. Okay, well, number one, that isn't accurate in the first place. But I'm going to tell you something, folks. Every single person on that stage is working to be the reality TV star in chief. Since the invent and real what's the word I'm looking for? The completeness of television, where everybody had one. Not necessarily in the early days, but by the time everybody had one, our politics all went on the air. And that is how we all get it all. I'm standing here watching Bill O'Reilly talk about what went on today at New Hampshire. We get it all from reality TV. Carly Fiorina, I hate to tell you, dear, but you were running to be a reality TV star. The President of the United States is a reality TV star. And some of them we like and some of them we don't. John Boehner is a reality TV star. Marco Rubio, I hate to tell you, my friend, if you want to be president, that's what you're going to be. You're going to be the reality TV show in chief. Now, we're not going to follow you around the inside of your house, but we're going to follow you around the world with our cameras. I think that's just the dumbest thing. Every time somebody uses that, I see that argument made, I always almost have to say, you idiot, to use that argument. Kind of Glenn goes back to, you had mentioned earlier about you set up a standard for yourself. And you got to watch what standard, because you might find yourself within it. You mentioned that, and I'll tell you, Carly Fiorina people and Rubio people, there's a lot of them all in the same boat. Really, Rubio took from Fiorina. That's why she was at the bottom. He won that little war going on between the two of them, I think. But, there was recently I had a friend that supported Carly Fiorina for a long time. And then jumped on to Team Rubio, that posted an article that basically said this, that the reason why Donald Trump was not qualified is because he's never spent a day in office, and he has no military experience, and that all of our past presidents have had one or the other. And so my first question was, well, but you supported Carly Fiorina for a long time. And Carly Fiorina is in the same boat as Donald Trump in that area. She's she's a political outsider. She's never served office, ran for office one time before, but that was it, and no military experience. So that makes her a worthless candidate as well. You don't want to be throwing things at other people's candidates that can be used against what you support. But important point that you made there, Dan. Wanted to bring that out. We're up at the top of the hour, folks. Let me tell you, it's been a great week. We got some great things coming on. Don't forget Saturday Symposium with Dan Wilson on Saturday. Going to also have Glenn and Gary with him. And I know, Dan, you have a guest for this week?
No, we don't. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, but you got some in line. I keep following what you're doing there.
I have something in line, but I don't. It's not confirmed. I would rather not mention the person's name.
Oh so, yeah, no. And you got a few people that you're working on. And I'm a firm believer you're going to have some good guests coming up here these next few weeks. So everybody remember, Saturday morning at 11 o'clock Texas time, 12 o'clock Florida time. Having a great show. Gary and Glenn and Dan, I'm just so glad that you're doing it, and I don't have to worry about it. It's wonderful. But I did listen in to Morgan Brittany a little bit. You guys had a great job. And then on Monday, Conover U is Rodney Lee Conover. Having some great shows, I'll tell you, man. Jennifer Cabani, the editor of The College Fix, and go to thecollegefix.com. Incredible website telling you what's going on in the college campuses around the country, and it's incredible. Always have an incredible conversation with her and with Dr. Mark Brownstein, the doctor to the stars. He out in Beverly Hills and has taken care of some of the biggest names in Hollywood, and as well as one name we all know, a big name in Hollywood, Rodney Lee Conover. It was his general practitioner for about 10 years. Until Obamacare told Rodney that he couldn't have Dr. Brownstein anymore, and his insurance said he couldn't have Dr. Brownstein anymore. So that took care of that. But we've got Dr. Brownstein each Monday, and you got to hear this guy. I'm going to tell you. He's become one of my favorite people. He was raised in a very ultra-liberal Jewish family. surrounded by Democrats, and he, over the years, educating himself right out of it, and I've watched him even more and more conservative. And you want to talk about somebody with some passion? It's great. So tune in. First thing off the top of the hour, we always have Dr. Brownstein, and we always have a great discussion with him. So I want to remind everybody, join us then. And that and American sovereignty next week. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. We're going to put ourselves out with, what should we put ourselves out with? You know, I haven't done this in a long time, but I just have to play this one because I just like it. And, Dan already knows. Here it comes. Here it comes. It's one of those with a lead-in, though, Dan.
Oh, no.
The stars at night are big and bright.
Jennifer's
deep
already
in the heart of Texas, the prairie sky is wide and high. Deep in the heart.
Jennifer's already hung up, Dan. So you and Glenn, you see, you're outnumbered because Glenn and I are here in Texas.
Reminds me of the one I love. Deep in the heart of Texas.
Deep in the heart of Texas.
The coyotes wail along the trail. Deep in the heart of Texas. The rabbits rush around the brush. Deep in the heart of Texas. The cowboys cry, Yippee-yi. Deep in the heart of Texas, the doggies bawl. Deep in the heart of Texas, deep in the heart of Texas.
Good night, America.
Oh, wow. Good night, everybody.
The legend has returned.
Derek Zoolander.
Zoolander.
Why didn't we do this sooner?
I miss not knowing things with you. Ben Stiller. We're back. Owen Wilson.
Yeah!
Will Ferrell.
It's like a dream, but for real.
Penelope Cruz and Kristen Wiig.
Amazing.
Spend Valentine's Day with Zoolander.
It's like a blind date, only neither of us is blind. Unless you are blind, in which case you can't hear my voice anyway.
Zoolander 2. Directed by Ben Stiller. Now playing. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13.